Cool, here we are. It's day 2 now of our transformation of this truck from a standard suspension over to a coilover suspension that we're using from React Suspension. I talked to my cousin Jordan over here to help me out on this one because the rear is going to be a little bit more difficult than the front was, only because there's a lot of things to remove. So right now we're removing all the old suspension, including the leaf springs, the shocks, the shackles, U-bolts, basically all of the old suspension that holds on the rear differential. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to blow out all of the studs that hold on the brackets, and then we're going to replace that with mounts that will hang the 4-bar mount that we got from React Suspension. So just follow along for a little bit here. It might get a little bit loud, but don't worry about that. We'll show you what to do. Okay, let's get this out. It's going to go out all at once. I'll walk it over there. Okay, you and I walk it back over there. Oh, this thing is heavy. He didn't tell me it was going to be heavy. All right, this is what Jordan's making a bunch of noise doing right now, because what he's going to have to do to remove the front leaf spring hanger to replace it with the 4-bar hanger like this one from React is that he's going to have to go ahead and cut the rivets and then actually use this air hammer to slide the rivet out and punch the rest of it out with this little pin style punch like this one right here. Now it's going to make a lot of noise, so we're just going to show a little bit of what it is, and then you guys will get the idea when you do it yourself. So here we go. Okay, so if Jordan's got this guy loose, he's knocked all the rivets out, and if you notice, there is a big cut that he did, and that's where the emergency brakes used to pass through this bracket. Obviously, the emergency brake cables, we're gonna have to reuse those, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this off, and we'll probably end up welding that to the body mount, or however else we can get that done, but you will definitely need to cut that out. So this guy's ready to come out, and then we'll replace it with this part right here. That's basically just going to bolt right back through the same holes that Jordan just knocked out the rivets at. So pretty simple, but pretty loud.
While Jordan knocks out the remaining rivets on the driver's side, I'll keep things moving by installing the passenger side 4-bar mount using the grade 8 hardware from the React kit.
Okay, this is the bracket we're going to put on next. If you can see here, this thing is kind of a 2-part bracket here. It actually has ears for the forward link that's going to go forward, and then it also has this lower bracket here that's for the shock. Now, the smart thing about this on the way they designed it is obviously this sits right here in the rear end sits in the saddle real nicely, but it has these little alignment tabs that'll line it back up with the pad that's on the top of the axle there. So pretty basic. I like the construction of it. It's fully welded. Let's put it in. Now, real quick, you want to make sure that this alignment pin sits on the top of the alignment pin on the axle saddle, okay? We'll put that in place first. There it is, start running bolts down through it, and then use the bottom one to cinch them up. All right, notch is what's gonna go into place, and we were lucky enough to already have this truck have a notch in place, so we didn't have to cut this out. Now, the other notch that was on there was from the back side. Obviously, this one right here we're gonna put from the over it like this. This is way stronger than the other design. And we're able to pick up one of the bolts, the holes in the frame, put one of these bolts in. And then we're gonna go ahead and clamp this and drill out the rest of the holes. But what we ended up doing before we took a break is that we cut and we fit all the notches in place. So both the passenger side and the driver's side now have the React notch set into place. We got that all mocked up so we can drill out all the holes so they'll fit in place. Now we've got to remove one side so we're able to get the support cross member into the back of the frame here. So Jordan's going to take out the passenger side notch real quick, and then we'll get that other cross member in place.
Slide over one side of the rear cross member to allow it to fit in between the frame rails. Then locate the upper shock mount on the notch plate, which then aligns through the frame and ties in the rear cross member. Repeat the same steps on the opposite side before moving on to the next step.
Okay, so what we want to do right now, we got all this stuff set in place, and what we're going to do is we're going to tighten up this cross member first, and then we'll tighten up the front part of the notch, and then we'll be able to mark and drill these holes out. Obviously, the driver's side, we're going to need to mount the panhard bar mount And this passenger side, we're just going to bolt this into place for more strength. So, okay, let's get to it. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm using this actual size bit, which is a 3/8 bit that's going to go through this 3/8 hole. But since we don't have a center punch, this is kind of a way to cheat your way by just making a little divot on there, then going back to use like maybe a 3/16 drill bit to drill out a pilot hole first, because it's a lot easier to drill a smaller pilot hole before drilling up to the actual hardware size. So a little quick tip, makes things go a lot quicker and you don't break as many drill bits. Okay, so we just fit the panhard bar mount, which we're attaching to the driver's side of the frame. We're gonna bolt that up, and obviously the passenger side has the other side of the mount for the panhard bar. Now, we don't wanna set the panhard bar until we get the vehicle back on the ground. We wanna set the pinion angle and set the ride height of the vehicle, and then we're gonna snug up that bar. So, pretty straightforward right here. Pretty straightforward right back over here on the other side. Let's get the rest of this thing together. Now, you might notice that I'm putting on these bolts. So some of you might be thinking it's the wrong way, but the reason why we're putting the bolts in first and the nuts on second is that this bolt will interfere with this bolt going in if we were to put the bolt in that way. So we're just gonna have to set it in this way. But in the back, in case we want to route our exhaust system through here and out, I'm gonna put the bolt in this way. So the pattern might be a little changed, but it's for a purpose. All right, C-notch is in place, the shock mounts are in place, it's time for us to install the 4 bars. And the best way when you want to install your 4 bars is to make sure that the axle is actually centered in the center of the wheel well, in the center of the notch, and also to check your pinion angle. Once you've got that established, go ahead and take a measurement between the 2 holes of your front mount and also the mount that goes on your axle. That will determine how much of the bar you're going to have to adjust. We're going to set up this bar right now by threading in this bushing. And since this is a very heavy coarse thread and the bung itself is a very heavy coarse thread, it's a good idea to put a little bit of Teflon tape in there because for one, it'll help lubricate these threads and ensure that they spin down into the bung properly. But also number 2, that this stuff locks out moisture so you won't have any rust issues in case you have to adjust anything later on. So here we go. We're just going to start by wrapping the Teflon tape around the threads, and you want to wrap around one part of the tape before you start to angle it down, and then just angle it down until the threads have enough coverage on them, and you're good to go. All right, so Teflon's on there. Just going to start spinning this in, and now this is a right-hand thread, so you're just going to turn it in like you would normally turn in any other bolt into a nut. Okay. And we took our measurement, we figured out that we need the bars to be 28 inches long from the center of each one of the eyelets on the bar. So I'm going to spin this guy down pretty much all the way in, almost touching the jam nut there before I take a measurement. All right, so now we're going to hold this guy down. Okay, so we're going to take a measurement, and eye to eye, we're right at 28 inches. So we're perfect. Link bar is ready. We're going to install it into the mount. I went ahead and sprayed a little bit of lubricant on the side of the bushings here and sprayed a little bit inside the mount itself. So I'm going to put the front bar in first, and I'm going to do it here with the adjuster pointing forward, okay? So don't forget, very important, this Zerk fitting, you want to make sure that's facing down so you'll be able to get a grease gun on this because you definitely want to make sure these stay lubricated. You don't want a squeaky suspension. So here we go. This is the install. Okay, so we've got our 4-bar set, we've got our cross member in place. We don't want to put in the panhard bar, because we're not back set to ride height, it is now time to install these babies right here from Alden. This is their billet style double adjustable coilover shock. And turn it around right here. Obviously the bottom of the React kit is right here. We're gonna place this just like such. And then the top bracket obviously is gonna go on the top of the frame. We lower everything down. Obviously we'll get this thing back on its wheels, get it to ride height. We'll look to see if our pinion angle is set correctly, and then we'll also check to see if we're centered in the rear end. Alrighty. That goes in like place. The rest of it we'll just adjust up. All right, coilover installed. Okay, so we got our panhard bar installed here and also adjusted, but I'm gonna walk you guys through on how I did that, because there's a few steps that you wanna make sure that you take before you actually install this bar and install it properly. So let's take a look at what those steps are, okay? Step one, we definitely wanna make sure that the axle is sitting parallel in between the frame rails. And the way that we do that is use a measuring tape and a straight edge, okay? Okay, so starting over here on the driver's side, I'm gonna take my straight edge and I'm gonna put it up against the rotor. So I'm gonna take my measuring tape, I'm gonna measure the distance between the rotor and the outside of the frame, which I have 11 inches here on this driver's side. Now we're gonna move over to the passenger side. I'm gonna place the straight edge again on the rotor and then measure from the outside of the frame where I also have 11 inches. So right now we're sitting parallel in the middle of the frame, which means that our panhard is adjusted properly and we're ready to rock and roll. Now on the drive shaft angle, we're gonna use a special tool called a protractor. And this protractor I picked up at a local box store. You can get it at a home improvement or a hardware store. Some auto parts store have it, but this is crucial for us to understand what the drive shaft angle is. Now, when it comes to driveline angles, you wanna make sure that your tail shaft and that your pinion angle are basically parallel to each other, so that way you don't have any uneven wear of the drive shaft U-joints. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the protractor, I'm just gonna measure up here. I'll put that on our pinion angle. Then I'm gonna move back over here to the back of the transmission, and we're gonna place our protractor on the back side of the tail shaft or the output shaft of the transmission and also measure that degree. If both of those angles are parallel, we're in proper adjustment. And if we're not, let me show you how we're gonna adjust that right now. Come to adjusting pinion angle on a 4-bar kit, it's pretty simple. If you adjust the lower bars, you're gonna make the pinion angle come down. If you adjust the upper bars, you're gonna make the pinion angle come up. Now, things to think about is you're gonna really make sure that you're making the same adjustments to each side, because you don't want either one of the bars to be off-centered and actually force the rear end to be cockeyed inside the frame. If you have that matched and you have your pinion angle matched with your axle square in your frame, you're ready to drive this vehicle. Wheels, tires back on the ground, let's roll.
All right, I'm super stoked because we're just leaving our wheel and tire store where we had our truck aligned and the wheels and tires installed. We went with a set of Deuce Ninjas from Hot Rods by Boyd that measure 18.8 in the front and 18.10 in the rear. Plus we chose to use Nitto's 555 G2s that measure 255 by 40 up front and 295 40/18s out back. The Moog A-arms really tightened up the loose steering feeling that the truck gave me before, and now I feel more confident on the way it feels going down the road. Now what about the Alden coilover conversion? Before, the truck felt like I was driving a tired, old, worn-out truck, but with the Alden coilover, the truck feels fit again, allowing no lateral movement when at speed, and the positive feedback that the coilovers give you will actually egg you on to push the truck further and faster into a corner. That paired with React's 4-bar suspension gives me even more confidence when driving it, as the rear doesn't feel like an elephant on roller skates anymore. Just like the front kit, the rear suspension doesn't feel loose or heavy in a corner like it used to. Plus, the panhard bar does an awesome job of keeping the truck flat or neutral while in a corner. And finally, what about the brakes from AZ Pro Performance? Well, all you CK owners out there know that the stock brakes are far from good at best, so of course the kit from Pro Performance is a huge upgrade from the stock setup. I've always been a big fan of the Vet Caliper and Rotor kit from Bear, so I have to give kudos to the guys over at Pro Performance for teaming up with them and offering an affordable kit that works well, and judged by the distance that we've driven the truck so far as we season in these pads, the performance of the brakes just keeps getting better. Well, that's it. We're all done transforming this old sport truck into a real sports machine, and I hope you've had as much fun watching it as I've had fun driving it.